I'm Jocelyn, here again with another video, and very quickly, PSA, if you are going out into the sun, just remember to cover the neck as well as the face, because yes, that's looking quite pink. So I've got some very serious topics to talk about this week, so I'm just going to dive right in. So for those of you that don't know, I spent the academic years of 2015 to 2017 at college studying hairdressing in a vain attempt to try and gain employment of some kind, doing something creative that I would actually enjoy. And since then, I've been employed twice and actually lost both jobs. And as a result, I am looking for work. But in the 2.5 year hairdressing career, I've noticed something very disconcerting to me, which is the pervasive sexism in hairdressing, which is considered a fairly progressive, modern career path. So, I'll start at the beginning. September 2015, I started in a new group of hairdressing trainees, and one thing was very starkly obvious. Everyone, staff, students, faculty, or everyone around in the entire hairdressing department, apart from 2 people, were cisgender females. One of them was me, the other was a man. And he quickly received a nickname. And I don't know if he's comfortable with me talking about him, so I won't say his name. But the nickname was, his name, the man. Why might that be? It was the one discerning factor that was easiest to distinguish him from a room full of females. And it was meant completely inoffensively, and he enjoyed that nickname. He kind of reveled in it because, boost to the male ego, maybe. He got who wouldn't want to be called the man? Like, you the man. Kind of, that's the context that it was set in. Okay? But the implication is actually far deeper. Have we all been so ingrained with this internalized sexism that we found that was the only way to distinguish him from everybody else? Another thing with this person is it was not long before he was asked the question, "Are you gay?" Now, bear in mind, this question was asked by somebody who was not really the brightest tool in the shed, or who had any real reason to ask, or had any semblance of tact. I would also like to point out that the person that asked was not the same person that misgendered me. It was somebody else, completely different. Now, I admit, I was curious. I did want to ask, but I didn't. But the reason for that would have been to determine whether or not I could get into his pants, and sadly the answer to both of those questions was no. But this person had no real reason to ask. So why was it asked? Why did I even think about asking? I didn't do it, but I thought about why. Well, I think the implication being that a man in this career has to be somewhat effeminate, in order to fit the cultural stereotype norm. And this is, again, an example of sexism in practice. And the systemic sexism that I noticed in hairdressing goes far beyond these few incidents. College and at work, I encountered the labels, which I was deeply offended by: men's haircut and women's haircut, when what was actually meant was the traditional and cultural, typical masculine and feminine hairstyles in our society. The application of these different labels is used because men typically wear short hair where the workload is less, and then therefore men pay less than women for their haircuts. And no one seems to question this because it is just so deeply internalized into the system that we use. Now, you could make the argument that to maintain that sort of style, a man might pay the same as a woman, but just in like intervals, rather than having like long intervals. You have like lots of little short intervals. But since no one has researched these figures, it would be impossible to tell. And for me, I can't tell because my client base is so small, I can't do the research myself. And then it does also bring up, well, what happens when a woman wants to wear her hair short? And what happens when a man wants to wear his hair long? Again, that's cultural sexism at work. I found that since I cut my hair short into a mohawk, I've had a little bit more, like, not people that know me so much, but once or twice people have, even when I'm wearing makeup and feminine clothes and things like that and presenting as female, people still misgender me, or they don't get it correct, or they just don't bother. And for me, that's really depressing, because it's the new millennium, people. Gender isn't in hair. It's just going even further down the rabbit hole. Getting my qualification itself involved a unit called cutting women's hair. So again, systemic sexism right there. It's inbuilt into the qualification. Now, the guy I mentioned earlier, he got disqualified from an assessment for a feminine style on a man because of that distinction. And it did not sit well with me. I complained. I had no resolution that year, but the examining body did in fact take my complaint and did look into it, because it does also raise the issue of, well, what if somebody is non-binary and you want to do an assessment on their hair? Surely it's the workload done rather than the gender of the person having their hair done that counts. Also, I kind of had to push for my colouring hair unit because of one particular client I had who at the time identified as male but still had really, really long, lovely hair. And because the wording on that unit wasn't gender specific, I was able to use that style in my qualification as an assessment, but I still had to push for it. Didn't think I would need to, but there we go. So there's a few examples of sexism that I found in my career path, and I want to, obviously by bringing it up, I wanted to try and make sure that it wouldn't happen in the future, but also try and think about systemic sexism or any kind of, ingrained norms that are completely arbitrary, that are prevalent or exist within career paths, career roles, even today. Thank you very much for listening. See you soon. Bye.